Jaiwan Park stood at the window of the transport ship and watched the planet grow larger. Nexus Prime looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. 3 bright suns made the whole planet shine like a diamond. This was the center of the Vorthak Empire, the place where all the important decisions were made for the galaxy. The ship captain, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, looked at Jaiwan with pity in his large eyes. "First time to the capital, human?" "Yes," Jaiwan replied quietly. He kept his voice calm and polite, just like he had trained himself to do. "Bad timing," the captain said, shaking his head. "The Emperor just finished dealing with the Rigel rebels last week. Turned their whole planet into glass. Not a good time to be a new species asking for favors." Jaiwan nodded but said nothing. He had heard about Rigel. 20 billion people lived there just a month ago. Now it was a dead rock floating in space. The Vorthak called it a lesson in cooperation. The ship landed with a soft bump on a platform made of smooth white stone. As Jaiwan walked down the ramp, he felt the weight of 1,000 eyes watching him. Other aliens moved around the spaceport, but they all stopped to stare at the human. Most had never seen one before. A tall robot waited for him at the bottom of the ramp. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. "Ambassador Park. You will follow me to your quarters. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not touch anything unless given permission. Do you understand?" "I understand," Jaiwan said. The robot led him through streets that looked like they were carved from a single giant crystal. Buildings reached up so high that Jaiwan could not see their tops. Flying vehicles moved between them like schools of fish. Everything was beautiful and perfect and cold. They passed a large screen mounted on a building wall. Emperor Vashtor's face filled the screen, his purple scales shifting to black as he spoke. "The galaxy prospers under our guidance," his deep voice boomed. "All species find their proper place in our great empire." A crowd of aliens had gathered to watch. They cheered when the Emperor spoke, but Jaiwan noticed that the cheering sounded forced. Their eyes looked tired and afraid. The robot brought Jaiwan to a building that looked like a mountain made of green glass. "The Embassy District," it said. "Your quarters are on floor 7. Other Category 3 species live on floors 1 through 10. Category 2 species live on floors 11 through 20. Category 1 species live above that." "Where do the Vorthak live?" Jaiwan asked. The robot's head turned toward him with a sharp click. "The Vorthak live in the Palace District. They do not share buildings with other species." Jaiwan's room was small but clean. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the city. As soon as the robot left, he sat at the desk and began writing in a small notebook. He wrote down everything he had seen and heard. The captain's words about Rigel. The tired eyes of the aliens watching the Emperor's speech. The way the robot had clicked its head when he asked about the Vorthak. A soft chime came from his door. A young woman entered, carrying a tray of food. She had pale skin and dark hair, like a human but with small silver scales on her neck and hands. "I am Myri," she said in perfect English. "I bring food to the Category 3 ambassadors." "Thank you," Jaiwan said. "What species are you?" Myri looked around nervously before answering. "Alteran. We were Category 2 until last year. Then some of our people asked for better working conditions in the mines. Now we are Category 3. She set the tray on his desk. The food smelled good, but Jaiwan was more interested in what she had just told him. "They moved your whole species down a category for asking about working conditions?" "The Vorthak do not like questions," Myri whispered. "They especially do not like questions from species they consider beneath them." After she left, Jaiwan wrote more notes. The category system was not just about how advanced a species was. It was about how obedient they were. Step out of line and your whole people would be punished. That evening he received a message on his room's communication screen. It was from the Galactic Senate Administrative Office. "Ambassador Park. You will observe tomorrow's Senate session from Section C, Row 15, Seat 7. You will not speak during the session. You will not leave your seat without permission. Welcome to Nexus Prime." Jaiwan turned off the screen and looked out his window. The city lights twinkled like stars, beautiful and distant. Somewhere out there, in buildings made of crystal and metal, the most powerful beings in the galaxy were making decisions that would affect billions of lives. Tomorrow he would see them face to face. He would sit in his assigned seat and watch and listen and learn. They expected him to be quiet and grateful for the chance to observe their great democracy in action. They had no idea what they were really dealing with. Jaiwan had spent 15 years as a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He knew how to watch and wait and plan. Most importantly, he knew that sometimes the quiet ones were the most dangerous. He opened his notebook and wrote one more line. Day 1, they think humans are weak. Good. Let them keep thinking that. Jaiwan walked into the Senate chamber for the first time and tried not to show his shock. The room was enormous, with thousands of seats arranged in circles around a central platform. At the very top sat Emperor Vashtor on a throne made of black metal and red stones. His purple scales caught the light as he moved his massive head. The Category 3 section was at the very bottom, almost underground. Jaiwan found his seat between a small green alien who smelled like flowers and a tall gray creature with 6 arms. Neither one looked at him when he sat down. Welcome, beings of the galaxy, Emperor Vashtor's voice echoed through the chamber. Today we discuss the continued prosperity of our great empire. For 3 hours, Jaiwan listened to reports from different worlds. The Vorthak generals spoke about resource optimization, and population management, and maintaining stability. But Jaiwan heard something else in their words. When they talked about resource optimization, they meant stripping planets bare of everything valuable. When they mentioned population management, they meant moving people away from their homes to work in dangerous mines. When they said maintaining stability, they meant killing anyone who complained. The small green alien next to him was shaking. Jaiwan leaned closer and whispered, "Are you okay?" "They are talking about my world," the alien whispered back. "Kepler 7. They say we need better population management. That means half of us will be sent to the uranium mines next month." Jaiwan wrote this down in his notebook, but he was careful to hide what he was writing. Guards stood around the chamber watching everyone. After the session ended, Jaiwan followed the green alien into the hallway. "I am Ambassador Park from Earth. What is your name?" "I am Hannah from Kepler 7, she said, still shaking. "I have been coming to these sessions for 2 years. Every month it gets worse for my people." "Have you tried to speak to the Emperor directly?" Jaiwan asked. Hannah looked at him like he had said something crazy. "Category 3 species cannot speak in the chamber. We can only listen. If we try to talk, the guards will arrest us." That night, Jaiwan met with 2 other ambassadors in the building's basement. There was Miho, a tough-looking man from the Kethri system, and Subin, a woman whose people came from the Outer Ring worlds. "How long have you been coming to these sessions?" Jaiwan asked. 5 years, Miho said. "I watched them destroy my homeworld piece by piece. First they took our water. Then our forest. Now my people live in metal boxes and work 18 hours a day in factories." 3 years for me, Subin added. "They told us we were lucky to be part of the Empire. Lucky to have their protection. But protection from what? They are the only ones attacking us." Jaiwan showed them his notebook. He had been writing down everything for 2 weeks now. Names, dates, planets, numbers of people killed or moved. The pattern was clear. "They are not trying to govern the galaxy," Jaiwan said. "They are trying to use it up. Every species, every planet, every resource. They take everything until there is nothing left, then they move on to the next target." "We know this," Miho said. "But what can we do? Our fleets were destroyed when we first met them. Our weapons do not work against their technology. We are insects compared to them." Jaiwan closed his notebook and looked at his new friends. "My people have a saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall." Over the next month, Jaiwan attended every Senate session. He watched and listened and learned. He saw the Vorthak announce the relocation of the entire population of Cygnus Prime. He heard them discuss the mineral extraction project that would turn the ocean world of Aquaria into a dry rock. Each time he wrote it all down. Each time he felt angrier. He also learned that the other species were angry too. In the basement meetings that happened every few days, more ambassadors started coming. Soon there were 12, then 20, then 30. All of them Category 3 species. All of them watching their people suffer while the Vorthak grew richer and more powerful. "We need to do something," Hannah said during one meeting. "My government sent me here to help our people, not to watch them die slowly." "But what?" asked Subin. "They will not listen to our words. They laugh when we try to speak." Jaiwan had been thinking about this problem for weeks. What if we collected evidence? Real proof of what they are doing. Then we could send it to the other galaxies, show them what the Vorthak are really like. "Other galaxies?" Miho laughed bitterly. "The Vorthak control all communication outside our galaxy. No message gets through without their approval." That night, alone in his room, Jaiwan received a message on his private communicator. It was from Earth's government. The message was short, but it made his blood turn cold. Jaiwan. Vorthak ships have been spotted near the Centauri system. They are asking questions about our military capabilities and resource levels. We think Earth might be next on their list. Find out what you can. Time may be running out. Jaiwan stared at the message for a long time. His planet, his people, his family, they were all in danger. And he was sitting here, powerless, watching the Vorthak plan their next genocide. He picked up his notebook and began writing a new entry. But this time he was not just recording what he saw. This time he was planning what he was going to do about it. Jaiwan was sitting in the Senate chamber when the news came. Admiral Kethvar, a massive Vorthak with silver scales and cold yellow eyes, stepped up to the speaking platform. His voice was calm and matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Citizens of the Empire, he began, yesterday we completed a successful orbital correction operation in the Sol system. The human colony of New Geneva was showing dangerous signs of unauthorized expansion. Jaiwan's blood turned to ice. New Geneva was home to 15 million people. His sister Soyeon lived there with her family. His nephew Jihun had just started school there last month. The correction was swift and thorough, Admiral Kethvar continued. The colony's population has been reduced to manageable levels. The humans' aggressive territorial expansion has been properly contained. Around the chamber, the Category 1 and 2 species applauded politely. Some even looked pleased. But Jaiwan could barely breathe. Reduced to manageable levels. That was Vorthak language for mass murder. His hands shook as he pulled out his emergency communicator. He tried to contact New Geneva but got only static. He tried Earth's government. The message that came back was short and terrible. New Geneva destroyed. 15 million confirmed dead. No survivors found. Jaiwan stood up from his seat. He did not ask for permission. He did not follow protocol. He just stood up and shouted across the massive chamber. You murdered 15 million innocent people. The entire Senate went silent. Thousands of alien faces turned to look at the small human in the Category 3 section. Emperor Vashtor's yellow eyes focused on Jaiwan like a predator looking at prey. The Category 3 representative will sit down and remain quiet, Emperor Vashtor said. His voice was soft but it carried clearly through the chamber's sound system. They were farmers and teachers and children, Jaiwan continued, his voice getting louder. They never hurt anyone. They were just trying to build homes for their families. Guards, the Emperor said calmly. 4 Vorthak soldiers in black armor started moving toward Jaiwan's section. But he kept talking. I demand an emergency session to address this massacre. I demand justice for the people of New Geneva. I demand. Emperor Vashtor started laughing. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the crystal walls. Other Vorthak in the chamber joined in. Soon half the Senate was laughing at the angry human. You demand? Emperor Vashtor said when the laughter died down. Little human, you seem confused about your place here. You observe. You listen. You learn to be grateful that we allow your species to exist at all. You do not demand anything. The guards reached Jaiwan's row. They grabbed his arms and started pulling him toward the exit. But Emperor Vashtor held up one massive hand. Wait, he said. Let the humans speak. I think the galaxy should hear what Category 3 species sound like when they forget their place. The guards stopped but kept their grip on Jaiwan's arms. All around the chamber, aliens were watching him. Some looked curious. Some looked embarrassed. Most looked afraid. You call it orbital correction, Jaiwan said, trying to keep his voice steady. I call it genocide. You killed 15 million people because they built too many farms. Because they had too many children. Because they dared to be happy without asking your permission first. They expanded beyond their assigned territory, Admiral Kethvar said. They ignored 3 official warnings. They left us no choice. No choice. Jaiwan could not believe what he was hearing. Your choice was to talk to them. To find a compromise. To act like civilized beings instead of... Instead of what? Emperor Vashtor leaned forward on his throne. Choose your next words carefully, human. Jaiwan looked around the chamber. At the thousands of representatives who sat quietly while their people suffered. At the Vorthak officials who spoke about murder like it was routine business. At the emperor who treated genocide like a minor administrative task. Instead of monsters, Jaiwan said. The silence that followed was complete. Not even the sound of breathing could be heard in the massive chamber. Emperor Vashtor's scales shifted from purple to deep black, a sign of Vorthak rage. Remove this creature, the emperor said quietly. And make sure it understands that its next outburst will be its last. The guards dragged Jaiwan toward the exit. As they pulled him through the doorway, he heard Emperor Vashtor addressing the Senate again. Let this be a lesson to all Category 3 species. The Empire's patience has limits. The human colony of New Geneva forgot this. 2 more human worlds have been marked for similar correction. Perhaps the loss of New Sydney and New Tokyo will help the humans remember their place. The guards threw Jaiwan into a small holding cell beneath the Senate building. He sat on the hard floor and put his head in his hands. New Sydney had 8 million people. New Tokyo had 12 million. His cousin Dong Hyun lived in New Sydney. His old friend Yuna had moved to New Tokyo just last year. 20 more million people were going to die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The Vortak would not listen to reason. They would not negotiate. They would not show mercy. They saw humans as nothing more than pests to be eliminated when they became inconvenient. Hours later, Ambassador Hannah came to see him. The guards led her into his cell because she brought food and because Category 3 species were not considered dangerous. "I am sorry about your people," she said quietly. Jaiwan looked up at her. "They're going to kill 20 million more. New Sydney and New Tokyo. And after that, they will find excuses to destroy other colonies. They will keep killing until there are no humans left. What will you do?" Hannah asked. Jaiwan was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up and walked to the small window in his cell. Through the bars, he could see the Senate building rising into the sky like a crystal mountain. "I tried diplomacy," he said. "I tried following their rules. I tried being patient and polite and reasonable. None of it worked." He turned back to Hannah. His eyes had changed. They were no longer the eyes of a diplomat trying to find peaceful solutions. They were the eyes of a soldier who had decided that the time for peace was over. "Tomorrow there is another Senate session," Jaiwan said. "Emperor Vashtor will probably announce the destruction of New Sydney and New Tokyo. He will talk about it like it is good news. And I am going to show him what happens when you push humans too far." Jaiwan woke up early on the morning of the Senate session. He had not slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his family members on New Geneva. His sister Soyeon laughing at her wedding. His nephew Jihun playing with toy spaceships. All of them gone now, turned to ash by Vortak weapons. He put on his best diplomatic suit, the dark blue one he wore for important meetings. He combed his hair neatly and checked his appearance in the mirror. He wanted to look respectable when he did what he was about to do. In his pocket, he carried a small device that Miho had given him the night before. It was a personal transmitter that could broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. "If you are really going to do this," Miho had said, "make sure everyone sees it." The Senate chamber was crowded that morning. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the seats. Word had spread about yesterday's incident with the angry human, and many beings wanted to see what would happen next. Jaiwan walked through the security checkpoint like he had done dozens of times before. The Vortak guards knew him now. He was just the quiet human ambassador who sat in his assigned seat and took notes. They barely looked at him as he passed through the metal detectors. "Good morning, Ambassador Park," said Guard Captain Vextar. "Feeling better today, I hope?" "Much better, thank you," Jaiwan replied with a polite smile. He walked down the steps toward the Category 3 section, but instead of turning toward his seat, he kept walking toward the center of the chamber. Other representatives looked at him curiously as he passed their rows. On the central platform, Emperor Vashtor was beginning his daily address to the Senate. His massive form filled the space, purple scales gleaming under the bright lights. His voice boomed across the chamber as he spoke about the Empire's continued success. "Citizens of our great galaxy," the Emperor said, "today brings more good news about maintaining proper order among the Category 3 species." Jaiwan kept walking. He was now at the edge of the main floor, only 50 meters from the Emperor's platform. Some of the Category 1 ambassadors were starting to notice him. "The human colony of New Sydney has been scheduled for orbital correction next week," Emperor Vashtor announced. "Intelligence reports indicate dangerous levels of unauthorized industrial development." 20 meters away now, Jaiwan could see the details of the Emperor's face. The cold yellow eyes. The rows of sharp teeth. The way his mouth curved into a satisfied smile as he talked about destroying another human world. "Following that operation, we will address similar problems on the human world of New Tokyo. These corrections will help the human species understand their proper place in our empire." 10 meters. The Emperor's personal guards were starting to notice the human walking toward them, but they were not alarmed yet. Category 3 species were not considered threats. "These actions are necessary for galactic stability," Emperor Vashtor continued. "Some species must learn that expansion beyond assigned limits will not be." "Stop." Jaiwan's voice was not loud, but it carried clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. The Emperor stopped speaking mid-sentence and looked down at the small human standing at the base of his platform. "What did you say?" Emperor Vashtor asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. "I said stop," Jaiwan repeated louder this time. "Stop murdering my people. Stop calling genocide a correction. Stop pretending you are bringing peace to the galaxy." The chamber was completely silent. Thousands of beings held their breath as they watched the tiny human confront the most powerful being in the galaxy. Emperor Vashtor stood up from his throne. He was 3 meters tall and covered in muscle and armor like scales. Next to him, Jaiwan looked like a child facing a giant. "You forget yourself, human," the Emperor said. "Guards, remove this creature before I." Jaiwan moved faster than anyone expected. 20 years of military training had taught him exactly how to fight opponents larger than himself. He sprinted up the steps to the Emperor's platform in 3 quick bounds. The Vorthak guards reached for their weapons, but Jaiwan was already past them. His hands found the pressure points on Emperor Vashtor's massive neck, spots where even Vorthak armor had gaps for flexibility. The Emperor tried to swat him away, but Jaiwan ducked under the huge arm and used the Emperor's own movement against him. Years of combat experience had taught him that size meant nothing if you knew where to strike. He grabbed Emperor Vashtor's head with both hands and pulled downward with all his strength. The Emperor, off balance and surprised, fell forward. Jaiwan guided that fall, slamming the Emperor's armored head against the crystal floor of the platform with a crack that echoed through the entire chamber. "That," Jaiwan said, breathing hard, "was for New Geneva." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some beings screamed. Others cheered. Most just stared in shock at the sight of the galaxy's supreme ruler lying on the floor with blood running from his head. Jaiwan pulled out his transmitter and activated it. Instantly, his image was being broadcast to every world in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," he said, his voice now reaching billions of beings, "you have just seen the truth. Your invincible emperor can be defeated. Your perfect empire can be challenged. We are not as weak as they want us to believe." Vorthak reinforcements were pouring into the chamber now, but something unexpected was happening. Ambassador Hannah jumped from her seat and ran onto the platform to stand beside Jaiwan. Then Miho joined them. Then Subin. Soon dozens of Category 3 representatives were forming a circle around the human who had dared to strike down their oppressor. Emperor Vashtor struggled to his feet, purple blood streaming down his face. His yellow eyes blazed with fury, but for the first time in his life, he also looked afraid. "Kill them all," he snarled at his guards. But it was too late. The image of the fallen emperor was already spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived in fear for centuries were seeing that their rulers could bleed. The Vorthak guards moved toward the group of Category 3 ambassadors, but they stopped when they heard a new sound. It was coming from the communication systems throughout the Senate chamber. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. "Sir," a guard captain said to Emperor Vashtor, "we are receiving emergency signals from the Outer Rim sectors." The Emperor wiped blood from his face and glared at the humans and aliens still standing around Jaiwan. "What kind of signals?" "Rebellion, sir. On Kepler 7, the workers have taken over the uranium mines. On Rigel 2, the survivors are attacking our supply ships. On Altara Prime, they have destroyed 3 communication towers." More reports came in every few seconds. The image of Emperor Vashtor falling to the chamber floor was spreading faster than the Vorthak could stop it. On world after world, beings who had never dared to fight back were suddenly picking up weapons. "How is this possible?" the Emperor demanded. "Cut all communications. Stop the broadcasts." "We cannot, sir," the captain replied. "They are using our own communication network against us. The human's transmitter connected to the central system. Every world in the Empire is seeing this." Jaiwan smiled despite the pain in his arms where the guards had grabbed him. His simple plan was working better than he had hoped. For 300 years, the Vorthak had ruled through fear. They had convinced everyone that they were too powerful to fight. But now, billions of beings had watched a single human knock their emperor to the ground. Ambassador Hannah stepped closer to Jaiwan. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now we find out if the galaxy is ready to be free," he whispered back. Emperor Vashtor heard them talking and his rage grew even stronger. "Enough. I want that human dead. I want his planet turned to glass. I want his entire species wiped from existence." "Sir," another officer interrupted, "Admiral Korth is reporting that his fleet is under attack near the Kethari system. The local defense forces are fighting back. They should be easy to defeat, but..." "But what?" "But 17 other systems are also fighting, sir. Our fleets are spread too thin to handle simultaneous rebellions across the galaxy." The Emperor's yellow eyes widened. He was starting to understand what was happening. The human's action had not just embarrassed him. It had lit a fire that was spreading across every world the Vortak controlled. "Sir," came another report, "the Category 2 species are also joining the rebellions. The Zalari have declared independence. The Corvani are attacking our mining facilities on their homeworld." Jaiwan looked around the Senate chamber. Many of the Category 1 and 2 ambassadors were quietly leaving their seats and heading for the exits. They could sense that the balance of power was shifting, and they wanted to be on the winning side. "You have started something that will destroy us all," Emperor Vashtor said to Jaiwan. "Without our order, the galaxy will fall into chaos." "Your order was built on murder and slavery," Jaiwan replied. "Maybe a little chaos is exactly what the galaxy needs." The Emperor raised his hand to strike Jaiwan down, but Ambassador Miho stepped between them. "If you want to hurt him, you will have to go through all of us." Behind Miho stood dozens of other representatives. Not just Category 3 species now, but some Category 2 ambassadors as well. For the first time in centuries, they were standing together against their oppressors. "Sir." A new officer ran into the chamber. "Emergency report from Earth Sector. The human fleet is mobilizing. They are moving toward our border stations." Emperor Vashtor laughed bitterly. "The human fleet? Their ships are barely capable of interplanetary travel." "Not anymore, sir. Intelligence reports suggest they have been secretly building new ships for the past 50 years. Fast ships. Armed ships. They hid them throughout their system, disguised as mining vessels and cargo haulers." Jaiwan felt a surge of pride. His people had not been sitting idle while he tried diplomacy. They had been preparing for war just in case talking failed. And now that talking had failed, they were ready. "How many ships?" the Emperor demanded. "Over 2,000, sir. And they are being joined by ships from other systems. The rebels are coordinating their attacks." The reports kept coming. The Centauri colonies were in full rebellion. The mining worlds of the Beta sector had declared independence. Even some of the Category 1 species were questioning their loyalty to the Empire. Emperor Vashtor looked around his Senate chamber. Half the seats were empty now. The ambassadors who remained looked nervous and uncertain. The guards looked confused and scared. "This is your fault," the Emperor said to Jaiwan. "You have doomed the galaxy to war." "No," Jaiwan replied. "You doomed it to war 300 years ago when you decided that peace meant slavery. I just gave people the courage to fight back." The Emperor nodded to his guards. "Arrest them all. Execute them publicly. Maybe that will convince the rebels to surrender." But as the guards moved forward, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Emergency lights flashed red and warning sirens wailed. "Sir," another officer burst into the chamber. "Rebel ships have entered the Nexus system. They are heading directly for the capital." Emperor Vashtor's face went pale. "How many ships?" "We count over 500 so far, sir. More arriving every minute. The Kethri fleet, the Zalari navy, human ships, and vessels from dozens of other worlds. They are all flying together." For the first time in his life, Emperor Vashtor looked truly afraid. The empire he had ruled with absolute power was falling apart around him. The beings he had enslaved and terrorized were coming to tear down his throne. "Sir," the guard captain said quietly, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the rebels." "Never," the emperor roared. "I would rather die than surrender to these inferior species." "Then you probably will," Jaiwan said calmly. "Because I do not think they are coming here to talk." Through the crystal walls of the Senate chamber, they could see the first rebel ships entering the planet's atmosphere. They flew in formation, proud and defiant, carrying the hopes of billions of beings who had never dared to dream of freedom. The revolution had begun with one human's desperate act of defiance. Now it would end with the galaxy deciding its own fate, free from the Vortak Empire's 3 centuries of terror. Jaiwan smiled as the first explosions lit up the sky outside. He might not survive to see the new galaxy that would rise from the ashes of the old one. But he had given his people and all the oppressed species of the galaxy something they had almost forgotten they could have.